So that was me talking in Mongolian, but no, Bart is a force for good himself. He's a one-man, not a one-man wrecking crew. Is a, working with a ton of great people. But he's, his organization is impacting 70,000 companies worldwide, helping us, become business as a force for good. He's also former president for And One basketball shoes, one of my favorite brands in the world growing up. So Bart and I also had a nice happy hour chat about basketball. We were talking how And One worked with, Vince Carter and his time meeting Magic Johnson, Skip to My Lou, Rafer Alston, I think is his real name, and street basketball. So a lot of really great stories. So we'll upload that basketball happy hour video so you guys can watch that as well. But without further ado, Bart, please take it away. And we're so excited to have you give us a keynote speech, and then we'll jump onto our panel afterwards.
Beautiful. And Morgan, I think we're planning to leave a few minutes at the end for Q&A. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. If we do have time, we can do that.
Awesome. Awesome. And I just want to make sure I got that clear, that I am following a dance party, that you have me actually following the dance party. Is that what you're asking me to do right now, Morgan? Is that fair?
Yeah, part of us going over the time limit might have been hoping that you would join us on the other session and catch us dancing. But yeah, please take us away.
I don't think I've ever followed a dance party, but I'm excited to be here. I thank you guys for having me. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. Can you guys all see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Well, listen, we're going to, recognizing that we have a terrific panel starting in 21 minutes, what I'm going to try to do is maybe for 10, 15 minutes, walk you through kind of an overview of the work that I do, why I think it matters, why it hopefully will be relevant to you. And it's really going to be asking this question: what is the purpose of business? Why are we all engaging in capitalism? What are we trying to accomplish with our work? Because I believe right now globally, it's shifting. And let's just talk a little bit about that. I want to begin with some background because I think it's relevant. I am running currently a nonprofit called B-Lab, but my background's as an entrepreneur. I am one of you. I, for about 11 years, ran an athletic footwear and apparel company that Morgan mentioned, a company called And One. And One competed with Nike, Adidas, and Reebok at our height. We were about a $250 million revenue business. We were number 2 in basketball across the globe. We were distributed in 80 countries. And I was one of a team of 6 that began that company back in 1995 and scaled it. And during my 11 years at And One, there were a few very key learnings. The first was it became really evident to me that business is the most powerful man-made force in society. And we saw firsthand at And One that, in fact, it can be a force for good. We ran a business that was really family-focused. We treated our employees with loyalty and respect, and they returned that with an attrition rate that never went above 2% over our entire 11 years. We extended that approach to our factories overseas, where we made our apparel and our footwear mostly in Taiwan and in southern China, down in Shenzhen. And that over and over again resulted in beautiful relationships with factories. We tried to be a global business, but that a company that was in and of a community here in Pennsylvania, just outside Philadelphia. We thought we could be a global business and act locally. We gave 5% of our profits to charity. We had a direct service program, and we, of course, tried to measure and manage our environmental footprint. But what we also learned over the 11 years is that business just doesn't scale easily while holding on to purpose. It's challenging as the organization grows. You bring in new management, and you even bring in outside investors to hold on to your mission, your purpose. And we saw that firsthand at And One. And when it became most acute was at the moment of liquidity, the time that we decided to sell And One. We had been working away at the business for 11 years, it was time for this management team to move on. And it turns out that by law here in the US and in most jurisdictions, frankly, around the globe, at the moment of liquidity, you are legally required to maximize the returns to the shareholders. By then, and one had, I don't know, 150 different investors in the business. And when our legacy mattered most, when we were selling the company, we couldn't even talk about our employees, the community, and the environment. The only thing that mattered was who was offering the most money in cash. And though I bear the new owner no ill will, he bought the company at a fair price. Oh, I don't know, within about 6 months of the sale, he had fired all 250 of our employees. He had eliminated our ethical supply chain. He had gotten rid of all of our environmental efforts. And the truth is, at the back end of this kind of really magical 11-year run, it felt off. It felt like there should be a way, right? There should be a way that you can scale, raise capital, and even sell the company and hold on to the mission, the vision of the company. And that's what brought me to the idea of B-Lab, the idea of a better way for business, a way for purpose-driven entrepreneurs to make sure that the values that they've embedded in their business can survive a sale of the company. That was our original vision. And we started this nonprofit about a year after the sale of And1. Myself, J. Cohen Gilbert, who was with me at And1, and Andrew Kasoy, who was one of our first investors. We're actually all college buddies going back to Stanford University, and we had been working together for more than a decade at the moment of the start of B-Lab. And what we learned in our first year was that we were ignorant, that there were hundreds of thousands of companies that defined themselves as triple bottom line businesses, that they were trying to make money, but also be good to their people and the planet. They had 3 bottom lines. And that perhaps our role at B-Lab could be broader than just creating a way for a company to hold on to mission while they scale, but instead really asking the question of this first slide: what is the purpose of business, and can we help accelerate a movement to use business as a force for good, and in the process redefine what it means success, what success means in business. And what I mean by that is, if we all think of the current definition of a successful business, we think of revenue growth rates and gross profit margins and debt to equity ratios. It's all defined by the financial impact of the business. And as all of you know, as entrepreneurs, business has such a broader impact than just its financial outputs. You impact your workers, you impact your community, you impact your supply chain, you impact the environment. And therefore, shouldn't we also evaluate, when we're defining a successful business, your environmental footprint, your community engagement, your worker involvement? Shouldn't all of that also be part of the definition of a successful business? And so that became the vision of this nonprofit: redefining success in business to build a movement of people using business as a force for good, so that ultimately one day we can build a more inclusive and more regenerative economy, an economy that works for everyone. Now, our approach to this vision, it's really straightforward. It's really easy. We find leaders, best-in-class companies, whom we shine a light on and tell their story, and then we encourage others to follow. And hopefully, by telling their story and giving tools for others to follow, we can inspire behavior change amongst millions of companies, and billions of people will work for, invest in, and buy from these good businesses, all along the way working towards a more shared and durable prosperity. That's the approach. Now, these leaders, these best-in-class companies, we actually certify. Now, my guess is many of you haven't heard of our certifications, certified B corporations. The easiest way to think about it is if you're familiar with fair trade. Fair trade is to coffee what B Corp certification is to a good business. The important innovation here is that we're not just certifying a product or a single practice. Instead, we're certifying the whole company. We're evaluating whether this business has truly created a material positive impact on society and the environment. And so to be certified as a B Corp, you got to do three things. First, practices. It's a very difficult task, and it essentially gives evidence that you have met the highest standards of social and environmental performance. That's the first requirement. The second requirement is you must make sure that those commitments, evidenced through the test, are built to last. And the way you do that is you actually change your legal governing documents. You rewrite them so that you are legally obligated, accountable, not just to creating value for your shareholders, but also creating value for your community, your workers, and the environment. It's embedding in the DNA of your business this commitment to purpose. The third and final requirement is you must be transparent. You have to share from that impact assessment that we use, that test we talked about, not only your areas of excellence, but also areas for improvement. And if you do those three things, you can join this community of leaders. We now have about 3,300 certified B corporations. They hail from 150 different industries, 80 different countries. This is just a snapshot of a few. You'll recognize names that have been leading in social responsibility for decades. Companies like Natura down in Brazil, or Patagonia, the global outdoor apparel company, the Body Shop, Tritos Bank out of Amsterdam, one of the truly pioneers of values-driven banking. We also have Houlahan in the lower hand corner. Houlahan is an Afghani company that delivers cell service to millions of Afghanis around the country. We have a Kickstarter, whom many of you, I would imagine, know, or Alt School, which is redefining how we deliver secondary education. What I'm super proud of this slide is its diversity. You have multi-billion-dollar companies down to sole proprietors. They're on all corners of the globe, and they're in every industry you can imagine. That community of leaders is really a means to an end, right? We're trying to tell their story and encourage others to follow. And we use two tools to try to build a broader movement, right? 3,300 certified B corporations, that's awesome, but it's not a huge community. So how do we leverage their power to get others engaged? The first way we do that is the test, the tool that we use for certification. Well, it's a public good. Anybody can use it. It's kind of a do-it-yourself consulting tool. You can measure, manage, and improve your social and environmental performance using this tool. Embedded are best practice guides, the ability to set goals, all the automatic emails to let you know when your goals are coming up. As a result, we now have over 100,000 companies that have used this free system to change their behavior, to improve their social and environmental performance. Just this year, we took the tool that we used for certification and we reframed it around the Sustainable Development Goals, recognizing that as people talk about sustainability, the Sustainable Development Goals developed by the UN really are driving that agenda. And so we've created a secondary tool that allows you to measure, manage, and improve your performance on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. It's called the SDG Action Manager. That tool launched in January. I believe it has now over 8,000 people using it. We obviously work with partners all across the globe, including YPO, to try to drive the usage of this tool. So that's one of our scaling vehicles. The second is that legal framework that I described as the requirement for certification. Well, it turns out that in many jurisdictions, you can't just rewrite your articles of incorporation or your corporate constitution. If you do so and you're sued, you would lose in a court of law because it's in fact against current corporate law. And so we've had to pass a new legally recognized corporate form, something called a benefit corporation. Now, a benefit corporation has one really important difference from a traditional corporation. It changes fiduciary duty. It changes the accountability of the company, where you legally must consider not just your shareholders, but also all of your stakeholders and balance your shareholders and your stakeholders. That legal framework has now been passed 42 times, 38 times here in the United States in 38 different states. Corporate law in the states is state by state by state, but also in Italy, in Canada, in Ecuador, in Colombia. It's on the docket in about another 11 countries right now, and it's been recommended by the G7. So we kind of anticipate this new legal form passing year over year over year over year, and there are now more than 10,000 benefit corporations across the globe. Those are our two scaling tools. And if you put them all together, you have a certification, a group of leaders, inspiring companies to measure, manage, and improve their performance using our impact assessment, and those that have embedded in their DNA a commitment to stakeholders through a legal change to make sure that their commitment to purpose and mission is built to last. It's part of the governance of the company. So, I would imagine some of you are asking, why does all this matter? Like, at the end of the day, are you moving the needle? And what's interesting is that the world's coming our way right now. First, let me give you some data. 80% of global consumers expect business now to balance social interests with business interests. 80%. On top of that, that number grows even higher when you talk about workers. It turns out that the generation below me, the millennial generation, wants something different out of their workplace. They want both money and meaning. 86% of them would choose to work for a company that has purpose at its center, and they're willing to make trade-offs to join those types of organizations. Thirdly, there's capital flowing into this particular arena. There is $40 trillion right now that is moving from baby boomers to millennials. It's the largest wealth transfer in the history of mankind, and the next generation is investing that capital differently. The sustainable investment marketplace is the fastest growing marketplace in all of the capital markets. Over the last 2 years, it's grown by 38%. It's a massive shift in how capital is being deployed. In fact, here in the US, $1 in $4 in the US that's professionally managed is now in sustainable investing. If I go back just 10 years, that was $1 in $11. And so there's just a massive move towards deploying capital in a way that creates not just a return for shareholders, but also for society and the environment. And then finally, what I really want to leave you with is this isn't just the right thing to do, it's a better way to do business. That our community of certified B corporations, they're fundamentally more resilient. During the last downturn, our B corporations were 64% more likely to survive the financial crisis back from 2008 to 2012. 64%. That's not a rounding error. These companies would tell you they're thriving not in spite of their commitment to workers, community, and the environment, but because of it. It makes them a more resilient business. And importantly, I think there's a cultural shift beginning right now. This photo is of the Business Roundtable. These are leaders of some of the largest organizations in the world, including Tim Cook from Apple, Jeff Bezos from Amazon, Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan. This crew, back in mid last year, declared that there was a new purpose for business, that business no longer was exclusively about creating value for shareholders, but that they were going to lead their organizations for all stakeholders. That cultural shift was accelerated in Davos in January, where the World Economic Forum essentially said there's a new manifesto for business and that shareholder capitalism was dead and that the new way forward was stakeholder capitalism. This idea really dominated all of 2019, the idea for a reset for capitalism. And I think it's important to spend a minute on why. You know, we left a summer last year where we had fires in the Amazon and the Bahamas were underwater. Fast forward to the fall and we had Australia on fire and Venice underwater. Climate change is clearly becoming an existential risk for business, and business leaders are waking up to it. On top of that, we're in a moment when wealth inequality is accelerating. Now, this is not a new problem. Wealth inequality has existed for millennia, but the truth is right now we're seeing an acceleration where the truth is 66% of the world's population has less than 3% of the assets. There are 42 individuals that now have more money than half the planet. And when you put that wealth inequality in this planet, a planet where we are interconnected like never before, you see what happened last year in Paris and London and Hong Kong and Chile, where you had a massive amount of civil unrest. So for COVID, I will tell you that COVID is on the acceleration. We're laid bare the inequities of this system, and that we really need to, emerging from the pandemic, build a new economy, an economy that is more inclusive, where we all get to work. I'm not just making pronouncements like the Business Roundtable. It's a beautiful culture shift. We really put our money where our mouth is, and we measure, manage, and are accountable to something, a movement to use business as a force for good. Our community of certified B corporations is just one small component of this movement that truly is global, where we're seeing all of us working together to use business to reduce inequality, alleviate poverty, build better communities, and regenerate the economy and the environment. With that, I know I'm up against time, but I wanted to thank you all for joining me. And Morgan, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience about using business as a force for good.
No, I really appreciate that, Bart. This is definitely the way forward, and really appreciate your talk. So let's jump on the other call. So let's sign off here and then jump on the other link for the panel. So thank you everybody for listening, and see you soon.
Hope to see you on the panel.